I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
The world waited. July 20th, 1969.
9.
The Marshall Space Flight Center has achieved an enviable record today in successfully meeting our problems which have confronted us in our bid to place a man on the moon in this decade.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. It's one small step for man. 2. One giant leap for mankind. 1.
That is man's greatest accomplishment, getting to the moon. But for some reason, it is one of the hardest things to believe. But why? Why is it so hard to believe something that we've all been taught in school and you can see right here in front of you? Well, it's because I just don't think people trust shit.
Neil Armstrong, you're supposed to be on the moon. I just saw it on TV.
Oh, there's a tape delay and solar winds.
Like that Neil Armstrong guy. Have you seen him on the talk shows?
Neil Armstrong? You mean the first man to walk on the moon?
Talk about a fish story.
Yeah.
It wasn't, because it didn't happen. So he's gotten old, and now he like slurs on his thing. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it didn't happen. I'm gonna go on.
Theories. But then you find that 20% of Americans, that's like 60 million people, actually believe there's something in it. That the giant leap for mankind could have been the hoax of the century.
In the videos running NASA, and I'm like, were we there? Yes, I ran the RCA cameras. We faked the photos because the radiation belt hit it. They dolled them up, but we wouldn't have done that. I freaking know what happened.
That makes way more
Buzz Aldrin and the other one. Do it. This girl says, what was the scariest moment? And he goes, there was no scary moment because it didn't happen.
Scariest moment of the journey.
Scariest. It didn't happen. It could have been scary.
I am not a scientist. I am not here to give you any potent information on did we go to the moon or did we not go to the moon. What I am going to say is that, in my personal opinion, I do think we went to the moon. Okay? But I think that the footage was definitely a little spliced up, because you have to understand that I think that the moon landing conspiracy theories are really deep rooted in the distrust of the government and the amount of things that were happening in the 60s, because the 60s were the era of coups and assassination. I mean, any reasonable person can look at this footage right here and go, yeah, that shit probably ain't real. But the moon landing for me is not so much them physically going to the moon, because we can sit here and have debates all day about this, but I think that is a government smoke and mirror, like many things. I think when people get attached to these ideas, and whether they're wrong or right, which most times I think in the government's eyes they're probably wrong, because when you're right, I think you'll find out when you're right. But if you just look surface level, you can find that there's a lot of strange deaths that were involved in the Apollo missions involving NASA. And even in clips like Bart Searle, who confronted this astronaut here and left the camera recording. And he says, "You want me to get the CIA on them and get them waxed?"
Press. See you later. In court, I hope.
You want to call the CIA? Have them waxed?
And that is what I want to talk about. The strange deaths that occurred from the people within NASA and the people around NASA over the years that question this. Why is it such a hard thing to question? Why is it so weird? I mean, I understand that there's footage and there's evidence and there's rocks, right? But there's a lot of oddness to this outside of just the footage. Since the dawn of civilizations, humans have stared at the moon with awe and unease. It's been called a god, a guide, a curse, a clock. Ancient civilizations, from the Sumerians to the Mayans, charted its phases long before they understood what gravity or orbit was. But what's truly strange is that several ancient texts and oral traditions speak of a time before the moon even existed, like the Zulus in South Africa tell the story of two brothers who brought the moon and placed it in the sky. Old Greek philosophers like Aristotle called it the mirror of Earth, and in many ways that's exactly what it is. It's like a sort of silent twin that shouldn't even really be there. I mean, go outside and just look at it.
You can't do it.
Oh, look at this. Look at that.
Yeah,
look at this.
And if you tell that to the cops, they're not going to give you any consideration.
Oh, look at that.
But scientifically, the moon is odd. Its perfect size creates solar eclipse. Its rotation matches its orbit so precisely that we only ever see one side, the so-called dark side that never faces Earth. So, and its composition, nearly identical to Earth's crust, as if it was carved out of our planet. So maybe it's no surprise that when humanity finally reached it, not everyone believed what they saw. In the 1960s, the space race wasn't just exploration, it was Cold War performance. The US and the Soviet Union were battling for dominance, not just for orbit, but in perception. And for NASA, failure wasn't an option. That's where the seeds of doubt were planted, and one man years later would turn those seeds into a movement.
Your name is Bill Kaysing.
Yeah, I've written a number of books. There should be more in the...
So for years, Bill, I've heard the rumor that Disney faked the moon landing. I've heard this rumor that Disney faked the moon landing thing.
I'm here to prove that no man has ever landed on the moon.
Bill Kaysing. He didn't just start out as a conspiracy theorist. He worked at Rocketdyne, a company that helped design and test the engines used in the NASA Saturn V rockets.
The dawn of the space age had many of its beginnings in the Santa Susana Mountains of Southern California. For nearly 35 years, thunderous sounds have echoed through these hills. But it wasn't thunder. It was the roar of rocket engines unleashing their enormous power.
From 1956 to 1963, he saw firsthand the chaos, delays, and the engineering problems that plagued the early space program. And years later, after leaving the program, Kaysing claimed something had always bothered him. In his view, the U.S. didn't have the technology or the safety record to land on the moon in 1969. He pointed out, before Apollo, NASA's longest manned flight was only a few days in Earth orbit. Then suddenly, they were crossing 240,000 miles of radiation-filled space, landing precisely on a foreign world, taking off again and returning safely 6 times. And to him, that leap was impossible. In his book, We Never Went to the Moon and America's $30 billion Swindle, Kaysing laid out what he so-called a web of illusion. And I'm going to lay it out here, kind of what he's saying. The moon landings were filmed on a soundstage, possibly Area 51. NASA used Hollywood camera tricks or military-grade special effects to create the footage. Astronauts were forced into silence under government orders, and anyone who questioned the official story within NASA or outside of it found themselves discredited or worse. Kaysing said NASA's motivation wasn't pure deception, it was pressure. The Cold War was raging, the Soviets had already launched a Sputnik and sent Yuri Gagarin into space. America needed a victory fast, and if the technology couldn't deliver, the camera would. Kaysing's claims were dismissed by the media at the time, but they never went away. In fact, they inspired a wave of independent investigators, filmmakers, and journalists who wanted to know why NASA avoided certain questions, and why some people connected to these questions met ultimate ends. And by the late 90s and early 2000s, a new name emerged, Bart Sibrel.
Conspiracy theory that gets you, and I said, for me, it's the moon landing. I just really don't think it happened. Share, some ones that you think that are funny. And the overreaction to that tweet, and you brought up Bill Maher, he starts getting angry about, the media got angry, how dare you question the believe me, or you don't believe me, I actually went. And if you said, Candace, put your hand on the Bible and swear that you went to Dollywood with your kids, I'd be like, this is weird, but okay.
Why don't you just put the into the record in the argument, then put your hand on the Bible, swear to God you walked on the moon.
Mr. Sibrel, knowing you, that's probably a fake Bible.
Really?
I went to the moon, I walked on the moon. All the other people that you think are people that NASA says went to the moon and walked on the moon.
Oh, you won't?
Go to the moon and walk on the moon.
This is ludicrous, and I want you to put that on film. It's ludicrous. I swear,
under penalty of perjury,
I swear under penalty of perjury,
treason, and eternal damnation.
That
I walked on the moon during Apollo 17.
That I walked on the moon on Apollo 17 for 75 hours.
Quote, it says the likelihood of one individual being right increases in direct proportion to the intensity to which others are trying to prove him wrong. The fact that it gets this juvenile reaction as if I'm blaspheming their God is proof that we're correct.
Sibrel, a filmmaker and journalist, took Kaysing's skepticism and turned it into a movie called A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon in 2001 and Astronauts Gone Wild in 2004. Great movies. Check both of them out. But he accused NASA of staging the Apollo missions. He claimed to have discovered footage that showed astronauts faking parts of the journey from lower Earth orbit, pretending they were halfway to the moon.
The reason this was done is so that the truth of the matter would not be revealed. It is this. Though the federal government would have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon, it is not. Later that evening, they were said to be walking on the moon. How can this be when they were in Earth orbit only 9 hours earlier, and the moon is some 3 days' journey away? What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. The circumference of the window then appears to be the diameter of the Earth at a distance, with the darkened walls of the spacecraft appearing to be the blackness of space around it. That is why they wanted the interior dark and blocked out the sun from entering through the other windows, onto the spacecraft's wall. Here, the camera out no work, and the scene much less. This is a segment that they believed wasn't even being recorded, much less suitable for broadcast, for the lens was being zoomed out and the scene was being changed to that of an interior of the astronauts at work, and apparently the stop button popped back up on the recorder without notice. Here is the diffused work light that they used to see camera controls, but not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Finally, the iris is opened up, and you can see the real location of the camera, and the very bright and near Earth out the window.
Sibrel was relentless, ambushing astronauts, demanding them swear on the Bible that they walked on the moon. Most refused or engaged. One, Buzz Aldrin, famously punched him in the face. But behind the spectacle, Sibrel claimed something darker. He said his phones were tapped, his footage was tampered with, and that individuals claiming to be connected to NASA were warning him to drop it. He wasn't the first one to say that. During the 1970s and the 1980s, several independent researchers and journalists who tried to probe deeper into the Apollo-related deaths of the Apollo 1 fire reported that their calls were cut off, notes were missing off their desks, files were stolen or misplaced, with interviews with former NASA staff members. And some believe guys like Thomas Barron and the Apollo safety inspector who died after the Apollo 1 investigation was warning others who might dig too deep. So to them, the pattern was chilling. Whistleblowers and critics and skeptics always seemed to meet resistance or silence. NASA, of course, denies all allegations. They insist the moon landings were real. The footage is authentic and every death connected to the space program has been fully investigated. Yet, with official statements, one truth remains. Every time someone tries to question NASA's story, something strange follows. Careers ended, ridiculed, or worse. It could just be paranoia. I mean, these people have also made millions of dollars off of these conspiracies. Before Neil Armstrong, before Apollo 11, there was Apollo 1. Obviously, you can't get to 11 without starting with 1.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
On January 27th, 1967, astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee climbed into their capsule for a routine pre-launch test. But the rocket never left the ground. A spark ignited in a high-pressured oxygen cabin, and in seconds, an inferno took their lives. They never stood a chance. The official report blamed faulty wiring and pure oxygen. But to some, including the astronauts themselves, the problem had been clear long before that day. Gus Grissom's family remembers a man who lived for truth and precision, who feared the program was being rushed. He once hung a limit on the Apollo capsule, claiming it to be a limit machine. And he was quoted by his colleagues saying, "If we keep pushing like this, someone's going to get killed." And days later, it was him. His widow, Betty Grissom, never stopped fighting for answers. She pushed NASA for transparency, demanding acknowledgement and accountability, and she said for years it felt like they just wanted to forget. Even decades later, Scott Grissom, his son, called for the Apollo 1 fire to be reinvestigated. He said they kind of ignored Apollo 1 for 50 years. We've had tributes in Columbia and the Challenger for years, but Apollo 1, nothing. The Grissoms weren't chasing a conspiracy. They were chasing the truth, and that truth kept slipping further and further away. Then there's Thomas Barron, the safety inspector for the North American Aviation and a company that built the Apollo spacecraft. And he wrote a 500-page report detailing major safety failures and negligence and ignored warnings. And he testified before Congress, accusing NASA of covering up problems that could have saved the Apollo 1 crew. And weeks later, Thomas Barron and his entire family were dead, killed in what was ruled a train car accident. His 500-page report vanished, never recovered. NASA called it a tragedy, but to those who read pieces of his report, it was something else. It was a warning. And in the decades that followed, NASA went to achieve what many call mankind's greatest feat, the moon landing. I want to end this video by saying I am not a moon landing denier at all, okay? This is just a video of me diving into it because I think it's interesting. I've never really looked into the moon landing because I think it's kind of a kooky thing to do because, like, it's, you know, in the era of conspiracies that we're talking about here, like Watergate, COINTELPRO, I mean, you got the MLK murder, JFK. This is tied directly into it. It's all got the same people. So there's no wonder that people don't believe this shit. I don't think that it's a matter of footage. I just think it's a matter of trust. And if you already don't trust the government, then you're just not going to trust anything that they do that's so extraordinary.
Unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object that goes around Mars once in 7 hours.
The topic of NASA and moon landings, because listen, when the guys did it, it was fake and gay. I'm sorry, Matt, and it's time for you to admit it. It was just as bad. You just weren't alive for it, okay? Homies
The President of the United States is in his office now and would like to say a few words to you. Over.
Okay, homies were on the moon making phone calls before the time of cell phones. Like, hey, what's up, Prez? It's me. On the moon with the flag, no issues. First time we've ever flown this thing. Yeah, I don't know. We just got.
And I'm sure you've heard the rumors.
The moon landing.
That's right. That the moon landing was fake. That the moon landings all were fake. And I was the person who.
Seen anything that indicates the telemetry data is even in existence, and as I said, even if we had it, we don't have the machines to play it back.
But you're.
You're the one who said you walked on the moon when you didn't. Calling the kettle black, if I ever thought of saying I misrepresented myself. Away from me. You're a coward and a liar and a thief.
What they're really claiming is, back in 1969, cell phone, they sent on the first attempt when all of NASA's computers, and they can send it today with 54-year better technology. So what they're really claiming is, they had 1,000 times better technology in 1969 than they do today.
Not necessarily.
Looked up at the sky, could you actually see the stars and the solar corona in spite of the glare?
We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon. I don't recall during the period of time that we were photographing the sun
unparalleled fraud
stars we could
perpetrated
see.
against them. They should know.
Okay.
I mean, they're already suspicious of the government. They may as well have their suspicions confirmed.
Okay.
Justified.
I don't remember seeing any. I don't remember seeing any.
It's best. To you, we say, we've only completed a beginning. We leave you much that is undone. There are great ideas undiscovered, breakthroughs available to those who can remove one of truth's protective layers. There are places to go beyond belief. Those challenges are yours.